Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Particle Accelerator podcast, where we talk to future thinking business leaders about how to grow their team and accelerate their business. I'm here today with Lance. Lance, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey, thank you, Ben. Glad to be here. It's an honor. Lance Thrailkill is my name, and I'm the CEO of All Metals Fabricating. We're a contract manufacturer in Allen, Texas. We just specialize in sheet metal fabricating, machining, powder coating, electrical mechanical assembly. And I'm also the co-founder of Printed Technologies, a 3D home printing business that is about to change the affordable housing crisis here in America. And we're excited about that. We are building and also, so we're building houses and we're also building and selling machines, which is through our unique partnership with All Metals Fabricating, which is the 50% shareholder in the business.
So, super cool. So, 3D printing homes. This is different. People usually think of 3D printing as like a desktop thing, making little tchotchkes, trinkets, and plastic pieces. But this is actually using that 3D printing model to build homes. So, it's going to be super fun to dig into and super exciting innovation. Yeah, totally. Well, cool. Well, I'm excited to get to talk about some of these innovations that you're working on. I know your manufacturing plant is one of the most innovative manufacturing plants. 3D printing, obviously, pioneer in that space. What tech trend significantly impacted your industry, and how did your company respond?
Yeah, so on the I'll start with kind of on the printed side, which is predominantly what we're here to talk about. Let me back up even with all metals. So the adoption of automation back in 2016, we really started to automate and invest heavily to the tune of $800,000 a year on average in new equipment that is automated. And being able to see the ability to scale through that was really eye-opening for me. And the efficiencies you gain in your business, the way that it motivates and encourages people because they get to learn and adopt new technologies. And then fast forward, my business partner, Craig Pettit, who's the co-founder of this business, he had a real estate portfolio company, and my family's been invested with him for over 30 years. And so he would bring by checks for us, regular, checks, distribution checks, and so he bought a 3D printer back in like 2018, into 2018, early 2019, and he was trying to anticipate. So he's been in real estate for a long time. So we survived the '08 financial crisis. Say we were invested with him. And then there was another correction in the 2012 to 15 area. So he was just kind of looking for the next way to innovate the business. He's a very innovative thinker, very data junkie guy. He's got data for days. And so he bought this 3D printer and was telling me about it. And it took him about a year to get it working, had to, reconfigure things. And so I'm super interested. And then I started learning more about this and started hearing about Icon and what they were doing. And I started being the visionary that I am, started casting a really big vision for him and the possibility of this, just having seen what I had seen in manufacturing and the possibilities when you use robotics and automation to be able to scale and applying that same thought process to this manufacturing of homes. And so simultaneously, I built two homes over the last 5 years or so. And so that process, just how horribly inefficient the construction industry as a whole is. It's not a knock against, any one builder. I'm just speaking collectively as the industry. It's just, very inefficient in general. They kind of accept that you're going to have to rework things throughout the process, which to me, coming from manufacturing, was like mind blowing. It's like some paying up front for people to screw up. And like that's just adopted and accepted in the industry and like norm. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, I mean, for example, like if we get one piece of a 1,000 piece order wrong at All Metals, like we have a formal investigation of corrective action. Like we don't count that order as accepted. We do root cause analysis and try to get to the root cause to fix it. And so just seeing what I knew in manufacturing, seeing the inefficiencies in construction, and then seeing the possibility of with 3D printing. And so as I started to cast this big vision for Craig, he was like, man, Lance, I think you need to be the face of this company. And I'm like, okay, I like that. And so we pivoted our investment from the real estate portfolio into this 3D home printing. And then we renamed the company, rebranded it, and then we also redesigned the machine because we have manufacturing. We also have engineers. So we redesigned the machine and came up with our own design, which helped with the consistency of the beads and the quality of the print significantly, and which now we have patents on our design.
That's really cool. So kind of taking the high tolerance, I should say the low tolerance example of manufacturing, looking at home manufacturing, home building as kind of a low tolerance, or sorry,
Mm.
high tolerance. I keep
Yeah.
switching that up, but yeah, there used to be this analogy for like consider your work, and if you're building a piano or a home, and home was always that kind of like high tolerance thing where you could just like bend a nail over and smash it in and keep moving on, whereas if you're building a piano it had to be perfect, right? um, but yeah, it's interesting how in our mindset we've gotten into like, oh, home building doesn't need to be that precise when it's like the most impactful thing a person will ever buy
Yeah, for
is a
sure.
home.
And
And we just
persist, it really plays into efficiency, right? Like
mhm.
that's what it's all about. And efficiency just means building the best product in the most cost-effective manner that you can. And so you're right, square on about the tolerances. But really, what the negative impact is the efficiency that is done, right? And so one, the quality, and then two, just the cost. Those are the two kind of factors that factor into efficiency and time, of course. Which I consider part of a cost component. But and so yeah, in order to solve the affordable housing, or really just even if you can use these machines on a high-end product, which I think there's a whole blue ocean market for that is not our core focus at Printed on the construction side, but can play to the builder side. But in order to address the housing crisis, which cost is too high and speed of implementation building is too slow, you have to address efficiency. And so that's where that, yeah, call it low tolerance, but really it's efficiency. And so that's what we're bringing that manufacturing approach to construction through the use of automation.
Yeah, it's really cool. So what's the change there? If I were to build a regular home, it sounds like you have an idea for affordable housing. So you maybe have a standard around like your typical square footage you're trying to target with the 3D printed home. And then what do you think the time difference is if you're going to build that with regular construction versus the 3D printed home?
Yeah, so I'll just get real specific. And we have printed three homes and a bunch of other structures as well, which are rentals, and they range from 850 square feet to up to I think 1,200 or 1,500. It's the largest one. And so with 3D printing, you're removing framing, sheetrock, tape bed texture, paint, and masonry. I say paint. Paint is paint and insulation. So that could actually be up to seven. Paint and insulation. You still can paint the 3D, and you still do have to paint or the concrete rather the 3D printed concrete, and you still have to paint. If you don't buy pre-painted, which we will on the affordable housing side, doors and stuff like that, cabinetry, then you would still need to paint those. So just want to be super transparent there. But every time you're removing framing, sheetrock, tape bed texture, and which typically can be the same vendor, sometimes it's two different ones, two trades rather, and masonry. And so the process, those are done at different stages. Masonry, comes in a little bit later. But to print, let's just say like the 800 square foot house, we could do that in a week to two, 1 week to 2 weeks, not including foundation. So foundation is the same process. And so you're taking, when you think about framing, sheetrock, and tape bed texture. I mean, if you throw in paint, it throws the scale way up. I mean, painting my house that I just completed last year took 2 or 3 months. And so, but if you take paint out of it, you're talking about going from 3 months. I mean, if you're on a really fast builder, like doing production homes, on a custom build would be, much longer than that, down to 2 weeks, just as it relates to those. So, I mean, you could do, on a production home on the smaller side, like you could do a house in 6 months, maybe. I mean, you'd have to be a really good, builder, a really efficient builder, I should say, not good, but really efficient and speedy. And we could do that in 3 to 4 months.
Yeah.
So you're removing a lot of the trades, and the trades are what become difficult to manage. And we're not looking to replace jobs, but there's a significant trade shortage in America, and the trades are the ones that are difficult for builders to manage. So it's a real great value proposition for builders.
So a community planner that has a high homeless population, um, and needs this affordable housing could do a development, bunch of foundations are laid in, a bunch of homes get printed, some trades come in to kind of finish them. But you're talking about like a significant, like probably it sounds like 20% of the time per unit that it would take to do the similar development with traditional construction.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I would call it 50 to be safe, you know. It definitely 20% compared to just those trades, you know, but then the rest of it, it kind of evens
so
out
half as
the.
much time. What do you think the cost difference would be? Because you are saving on trades, and then of course the 3D printing is uh, is alleviating some of the sheetrock and framing costs. So there should be a materials trade off. What do you think the difference is on cost then?
Yeah, it's about 10 to 20%. So the bigger the house you go, like the bigger, the greater the savings because it doesn't cost us a lot more to print, you know, it's just more air, right? So I mean you are have adding walls, but like the interior walls, you know, don't really typically add a bunch. I mean, when you're doing a bigger house, there's now with open floor plans, there's not tons of different interior walls. So 10 to 20%, we think we can get that down. And right now we're using the highest, most expensive 3D mix, and that's because we get the best quality print with it and curing. And so, you know, with this round that we're about to raise, that is one thing we want to eventually develop our own white label 3D mix that we can hopefully have some cost savings there. That's just not something. That's something a lot of the 3D companies have spent a lot of time, or not a lot, but some of them. But for us in our stage, it's like let's just use the best product. And our team is always wanting to try all these different ones to get cost savings. I'm like, guys, like let's just stick with what works, you know.
Yeah,
We do have tried a lot, but the best one has been the most expensive. So I think we can save some costs there, and just as we gain efficiencies and continue to develop the machine and the automation further. We've also run with a three-man crew, and we really only need two. But just having three people out there adds cost, of course.
sure. That's really cool. Really cool. So cost savings, speed gain. What are some other technology innovations that you're betting on to drive your business growth? Or does the 3D printing encompass some other technology innovations that people wouldn't otherwise know?
Yeah, before I answer that, let me add this too. It's also a better product. So, and what I mean by that is, like I lost my last home to mold, and so mold is a non-issue in these homes. Fire. We look at what's going on in California. You can't burn these houses down. They're concrete. You see the fires in Hawaii. There was one house left standing, and it was a concrete. It was made of cinder blocks, granted, not 3D printed to be fully transparent. But these are essentially fireproof. Now there's still things that can burn. I don't want to be, misleading. Tornadoes, like these are not going to get blown over by a tornado. We do have technology on a roof that also makes it like completely tornado proof. That adds a lot of cost, so we're not focusing that on that with our products, but that is something that we can offer. Hurricanes, and that same thing with the mold too. With hurricane comes water, and so
Right.
no termites aren't an issue. So you don't have to worry about termites eating the wood. So you're offering a better product. And I say that it is a different aesthetic, right? So it's a more, contemporary architectural design. But with this new, with our next round, our next generation of machine, and there's already people out there doing it, we want to develop a way to print a brick style home. And so then you can appeal to the traditional style, which is, most people want a traditional style home, but all in all, and especially as we talk about affordable housing, like a lot of these things that they're living in are total junk. I mean, now you're building a fortress. And if you want to talk about, affordable housing for renters, we've had, three rentals, two of which have been around for 3, 4 years now. And when we've had a changeover and the rental client, like you just hose down the floors. Like that's because we use slick concrete floors. I mean, we put on our, slide deck for the capital raise $1,000 changeover versus like 4,000 plus for
Yeah.
traditional rentals. And it really can be less than that. And in
Yeah.
those lower income, it's like, people can be, known to put holes in walls and things like that. You can't do that. It's just an indestructible essential unit.
Yeah.
So I
There's
do
so
want to
many.
add that it's a better quality. It's not
Mm.
just faster and more cost effective. It's better quality. And that's where it goes back to that blue ocean product for higher end builders is they want to build some very sexy designs. You can do anything also. Like you can make a wavy wall. You can design anything into the print you want and get as creative as you want. So just wanted to add that before I answer the
Yeah.
technology
So
question.
a bit of a change to the aesthetic because you are going to see the 3D printed lines, but unless you do something really cosmetic, which would be an additional cost. But I think that can kind of be cool. What I also am reminded of is you've seen some really cool homes built with the storage unit or the storage trailer kind of design. And what they'll do is they'll combine multiples. It would be
Uh-huh.
interesting to see what people think of where, yes, it's three different houses, but they're configured together. And then, there's some form of hallway connection or whatever to create a bigger 3D printed home, but it was still contemplated in kind of three separate builds
Yeah,
in much the same way that you could combine those storage units and then have some creative connection of them to build a larger home. I imagine there'll be some creativity like that come up with your guys's unit of build.
absolutely. Yeah, we've got a design for so they're like triplexes for a Princeton development that we're also raising money for. So you can do some really cool stuff there too. You're right.
Yeah, that's cool.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah,
But yeah,
that's
it's back
awesome.
to your technology question. So in terms of other technology, we've created an augmented reality in our app where you can pick one of our model homes. If you have an iPhone, you can go and any place you want. If you let's say you want to, build it out on this lot, and you can pull up the model on your phone and view it on the lot. You can turn the house the way that you want. You can walk through it. So giving people that experience is a cool thing that we developed, and we want to further develop that to actually be able to train the builders that buy the machines and use the augmented reality to be able to train them, as well as help train the trades. And so that's something we want to utilize and grow that. It's for where we are. It's pretty amazing that we already have an augmented reality app, and we've really just scratched the surface on that. And then on the software side right now, so the printer is G-code based, and one of our strengths is being able to have this flexible entry point of the print, because different things come up on the job site, like it might not be perfectly level, and we're able to quickly pivot. Whereas if most of the other printers, printing companies, if not everything's right, like they had to shut down the job and then go reprogram everything, whereas we can make adjustments to the G code on the fly. So our system is very elementary in that way and utilitarian, which we don't want to lose that. So I start there because we do have an advantage in that. And like one guy, this 3D printing journalist and this concrete guy also was like, what I love about you guys is when you say you're going to print, I show up and you're printing. Like you're going to print every time. And most of the other companies, it's like, something goes wrong and they don't. I share all that to say what our next gen, we want to develop a software that's partly what we're raising capital for, where you can drop a model home into it and it automatically create the G code. Or you could, and I don't know too many scenarios you would do this, but you create the G code and then it creates the home. So allowing architects to drop their floor plan, their 3D CAD model into the software, and then it automatically creates. So what that'll do is it'll help us as we go to start selling these machines, which has not been our focus yet, but is a huge market there eventually once it gets widely adopted, and we'll be able to scale up quickly because of All Metals Fabricating, our partnership here. We could crank those things out by the day, and so that's the next technology we're looking to develop is our software. and further
Oh, that's
develop
so
our
cool.
augmented reality and just continue like there's like in tech like there's no point of arrival and with automation like if you're not constantly improving your machine then you're going to get passed and so we have some ideas we want to develop a third gen machine different style machine so we have two different options for people and then possibly also or eventually also a smaller machine for people that just like want to print benches and different things like that like our setup is way more than you'd ever want to set up to print benches, but there's some like really high end products that you can sell. And so having those other, kind of three different levels of the machine is another development that we're going to be working on.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, I even think of like interstate development, rest areas, these kinds of things that a lot of them are getting so old and are so have been so poorly maintained that just like there's already a foundation there, scrap it, put in some 3D printed. It's going to last longer, be more resistant to mold, like you mentioned, or more resistant to harm, easier to clean up. Just a lot of advantages, even to some of the kind of community resources that we leverage on a daily
Hmm.
basis. Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, I
What do
think
you?
eventually it's going to be adopted across all, I mean, commercial construction, everything. They're already doing some of that in China. And so I think the possibilities to your point are endless, but we're focused on our niche.
Yeah, it's really cool. Well, what do you think some of the most significant gaps are between your ambitions and realities? Like, if you are there adjacent problems that are kind of creating gaps for you that if you had a magic wand, you could help solve. I mean, one I could think of is just the general awareness that this exists, right? This alternate option exists. But what are some gaps that you're uh, need to that you just like are interrupting your ambitions?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd say the number one biggest by far is adoption of this technology by cities. And so right now we're limited to printing in rural areas where there aren't as much code and governmental control. And so the issue is one, just governmental entities are slow to move on anything, right? But so they don't know how to inspect the plans. Like we have engineered plans for every build. We get those stamped, of course. But like a city wouldn't know how to inspect those or green tag it, come out and inspect the plans or inspect the actual print. And so that's the biggest block right now. And so you've seen some cities start to embrace it. There's down in the outskirts of Austin where Icon did a development. They embraced it. There's another area in Colorado that has embraced it. And so that is by far our biggest hurdle to wide adoption of this technology. And it's just kind of a waiting game a little bit. It's just a matter of time. But if there's things that we can do to help further drive that, and I think coming at it through the affordable housing will motivate because that's such a problem. I think that will motivate the government to start to adopt this stuff. So that's one, and then you really nailed the second, general awareness. And it's kind of a twofold thing. Like one, just being aware of that it's what's available, and I think that's growing significantly thanks to Icon and others that have paved the way for us. And the other part of that is actually the desire for that. It's a different style of home, and so it takes a unique person, generally a younger person that's interested in innovation, sustainability, cares about sustainability, and doing the cool new thing. And so that architectural thing that I was talking about earlier, that plays into that appeal. So it's like a lot, the general population doesn't like contemporary construction. That's a kind of a small sector of people, and that is growing with the younger generation. But that's why I believe it's critical that we develop a brick methodology to be able to print bricks. And then just to paint the picture for everybody, like it's a picture like an self-serve ice cream dispenser. If you've never seen a 3D printer like a desktop one that Ben alluded to earlier, that's the way it works. You just functions is the word I was going to say, and it works on ours is a gantry system. There's others out there in different ways. That are more of like a robot, but it just soft serve ice cream coming out of the dispenser and printing the concrete to make the walls of the house, moving along the gantry system.
Yeah. Um, I think people can visualize that. If you've ever seen any CNC machine or the gantry system is kind of like that. It's a set of rails that move the spigot, if you will. And then you explained to me when we talked about this in our intro that like the pipes are still in the walls, the wire's still in the walls. It kind of paints around those or prints around those, so the walls still have some hollowness to them.
Yes,
like a traditional stud based wall,
exactly.
but it is concrete. It's just the aesthetic of it is like these lines in the wall. I think as you get going though, there's going to be some designers and the Pinterest and the Instagrams of the world will have these houses decked out, and
Uh-huh.
even the normal non-brick look is going to be made to look really cool and different. It's just
Absolutely.
that adoption, that alternate like vision isn't there, but I think people are going to buy into it.
Totally.
In
It's a
in
matter of
much
time.
this yeah, in much the same way, like I've seen some pretty cool looking vans that are decked out that I admire. People that it's really about aesthetics, and that's going to be a different kind of aesthetic.
Hmm. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, what do you think the biggest challenge is to maintaining your competitive edge in this industry?
Um, the biggest challenge to maintain our competitive edge. Well, I believe our competitive edge is our partnership with All Metals Fabricating, and so we've already got a world-class manufacturing facility built into our business, which I mean, most startups that would cost millions and millions of dollars. So because of the investment All Metals has made into printed, that really helps maintain our competitive advantage. It would be very difficult for somebody else to have that. But it really goes back to what I was saying earlier is like you can't just get comfortable and feel like you've arrived and be satisfied with your technology. It just takes this relentless drive to always be improving, always and never be satisfied with it, and simplifying it. And looking for ways to, ours is after affordable housing. So we want our machine, and it already is when we go to market with it, is about half the price as the competitors. And so figuring out ways to make it efficient as possible. Doesn't need to be cheap, it needs to be efficient. And never being satisfied with that, with where you're at.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Totally agree. I don't have much to add there. You do seem, since you're making the gantry system, you're making the actual 3D printed machine through your partnership with your generational manufacturing company. You seem to have that connected. Like you can take care of the machines, and then 3D printed is really the business to really how you're going to conduct business around selling the machines and operating them, building homes. That's super cool.
Yeah, and if I may add to it, Icon originally did their raise to solve affordable housing, and through the VC process, it's all hyper growth, and you can get, for lack of a better word, fat as an organization, a lot of overhead as an organization through that process, and some of the other printing companies or companies that are looking to solve construction issue through automation have a lot of capex, investment on the front end, and we've already have our machine, we have the manufacturing facilities, which but what I'll say is Icon, they positioned themselves where they really couldn't do affordable housing, and they're still working to help, try to figure that out. And Jason's very passionate about that. He's a great guy, and I believe he may figure out a way to do it. But they also early on were approached by the government and to start printing for the government, and that really helped funded their business. They even got a contract to print on Mars, and so they really left a void in that what they originally set out to do, which was solve affordable housing. And so I think staying focused on our niche and through the fundraising process, remaining lean, and not allowing ourselves to get too much overhead to where we can't print as efficiently and cost effectively rather as we can right now.
Yeah, so you're teeing me up for my next question. I find entrepreneurs that know how to manage their roadmap and connect their roadmap to their business strategy. And you've kind of hinted at this a couple of times. You seem to have a really good handle on what is your niche, what are you trying to solve, and then so your business strategy and your roadmap seem connected on a really solid target. And I think that's a super good indicator of success. But why don't you talk a little bit more on the principles that you've incorporated and really share your experience on how you're connecting your technology roadmap with your overall business strategy?
Yeah, so and I'll kind of just outlay what our roadmap is. And right now we want to capture as much of the printing business as we can. We had a natural sales channel internally with Craig's real estate portfolio. So we've never really had to go out and get business, so to speak. And that's our next step, which we're focusing on right now and we started our marketing strategy and kicking that off. But we want to start to capture the print opportunities as they come in and then and educate the general public on it. And then as these machines and this technology become adapted by municipalities and it gets widely accepted, then we transition, and not to say we just immediately transition this way, but it's a parallel path. One, it's crawl, walk, run. But then we start to focus on selling machines. So the machine, then once it gets widely adopted, and it's like you can't, unless you go start franchises all over the country, like you can't capture all this printing business. Even then, you'd capture just a small portion. At that point, it's like, no, we'll be a machine distributor and sell machines to people. And so that's where the business really can grow. And like at what point that happens, I don't know. I just know it will. I don't know how long it will take before it's adopted widely. But that's where the focus is like, okay, once that happens, then it's like, okay, now we're making 50% margin every machine we sell and the business is already profitable. And so that's just a quick roadmap of what our strategy is. So capture prints, raise awareness, start to find some early adopters on the machines for builders in rural areas so we can kind of work through the kinks of being a machine distributor. And then as it's widely adopted, go and sell as many machines as we can. And maybe we do franchise out for the building side of it. So that's, I don't know if that answers your question. But yeah, that's an overall roadmap. And how we weave the technology into that, is that the second piece of it? I mean,
Yeah,
what was
yeah,
part of that question?
yeah. How are you keeping it small? Like keeping the idea refined? Because you've mentioned that a couple of times. Like we're going to stay in our niche, and so are there some principles or some way of thinking that kept you there? Because I'll give you an example before, as you think of your answer. We worked with a company called Forte that does online music lessons. And that's the business they wanted to start. Basically, the Uber for music lessons. Come get a
Oh,
music
cool.
lesson from a Juilliard teacher. And early on, what they realized is they need to nail the in lesson experience. So you click on a link, you jump in, your teacher's there, you're enjoying a lesson. It's a good experience for the teacher, good experience for the student. They had this idea of like, well, teachers want to schedule and they need to pay for the lesson. So should we work on scheduling and payment? And what ended up happening is as they tried those two features, the requirements that teachers had for scheduling were like huge, right? Scheduling's a big problem. And so they smartly said, you know what, people can schedule themselves. We're just going to really focus on the in-lesson experience. And then we'll get around to payments when we get there. They found so kind of let the teachers invoice and schedule on their own for starters. It was a great way to get exposure into the market without trying to build everything all at once. And so because of that, they were able to progress through investment rounds and phase into the business. And I just think that appetite for solving certain problems, but not all the problems, is really a key to success. And I'm hearing that in some of your language. So just
Yeah, for
wonder how
sure.
you're thinking of it. Like what kind of things are out there that you could do, but for now you're just going to focus on a core competency.
So, yeah, I mean, custom builds. So, funny, we actually are going to do. We're in talks to do one right now. And while that's not in our niche and not what we should necessarily be focused on, we also need for our portfolio to be able to showcase kind of a higher end build for the machine sales side to cast a vision for the other builders of like what's possible. And so
Sure.
we are making an exception. We're doing two kind of custom builds with one family, and one of them is still squarely in our niche, even though it's is a quote unquote custom. It's one is a small kind of affordable house. The other one's a little bit more higher end. And so I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. But the reason we are doing that is because we see the need for this other side of the business on the machine sales side. Like you have to be able to show what the capability and how, because like printing affordable, like we saw affordable houses that we print, they're not sexy. Like they're not anything anybody's going to get excited about on the builder side. And so if we're getting, our business is two focuses: one, art construction, and then one, machine sales, all wrapped under a technology business. And so we're pivoting and making a calculated decision to do that so that we can satisfy this future need over here.
Yeah.
But really the need for affordable housing is so great, so huge that I just don't see us needing, I mean, every business early on, that's the challenge, right? Like you have to take what you can get,
Sure.
and so that's where I think people kind of get sideways and start doing too many different things and don't remain focused. But I'm just hopeful and believe that because that need is so great and because we've seen others that set out to do it and got diverted and like this is where our opportunity is. Like if you want like an amazing, sexy house 3D printed, like buy an icon house, and but if you want affordable housing, like you either buy our machine or have us come print them. So
Yeah.
because that opportunity was missed by others, I think it's just clear like, hey, here's the huge opportunity. It's lots of reps, and a lot of people don't want that. They want to build a house and make a sizable clip on it. So I'd rather make a little bit of money a bunch of times and solve a really like for me, it's about the heart, right? Of like, man, we have a real problem in this country and it affects the people that need it the most. And so
Sure.
that's what motivates me is really helping solve this major issue. And it's not just in America, it's worldwide.
Right. Love that. And to maybe make you feel better about the custom housing trial, McKinsey has this model. It's called the three horizon model. And it's basically saying horizon one is the stuff that is immediately relevant to my business. Like I have to do it. Horizon two is kind of that next stage of, hey, like next year it's really about growth and new revenue. And then horizon
Exploratory.
three is really that like vision casting. Where could this go? And it's common that businesses would do like a 70-20-10, and that the idea is if you never work on those future opportunities, then you won't create that next level of growth. So you'll create a business that plateaus. So if you at least think about what is that 10% spend we could do, that would be that next level of growth, that next trajectory, some adherence to my 5-year plan rather than just always focused on the current problem. And a lot of folks will expend some energy into those future strategies, those R&D initiatives, and that can be okay if it's. And I think the McKinsey hypothesis is that you need to do that. That
It's
is
great.
part of strategic planning, is to think about horizon three. Don't ignore it.
Thank you. Yeah, and for us, it's like if you want to sell machines to other verticals, like you've got to dabble in that. I mean, you look at like, army barracks, like, storm shelters, barns, shops for people, there's so many different verticals, and we're going to have to early on print some of those things so that we can show it can be done so that when we get as we're selling machines, like, hey, we did this. We're not going after this on the construction side. We did a little bit of it to showcase that it can be done
Yeah,
and done.
I even think of like the affordable home as a Lego block, and then something like army barracks as some sort of repetitive Lego block that,
Hmm.
yeah, maybe needs a little bit of trades to incorporate with each other, but that um, like intelligently moving the gantry like so many times to build some larger event, but like there's a unit of work, and we build that, and then we can pause, and then we can build the next thing. I think that's what you see in 3D printing plastic is that, oh, well, if I just do this same printing operation tons of times, then I can create something really cool.
Mhm.
Um,
Absolutely.
cool. Well, since you mentioned something earlier that I've waited to ask because I knew this question was coming up in my agenda. In manufacturing, you shared that you were always buying automation machines, and now your team, you've made a culture statement that your team is now like, hey, how could we do this better? How did you cultivate a culture of innovation and that kind of fluency? Because when I think of manufacturing, I think of people who would be threatened by automation, that would be worried about it. But it sounds like you've made a transition there with the way that your manufacturing company runs at All Metals. How did you do that? Can you give us any secret on how to create that type of organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really just starts with caring for people. So like if the people know that you have their best interest at heart, then they're going to trust you. And so it really like you have to really care about people. And so and then it's just reminding people like, hey, uh automation, robotics is not a replacement of humans. It's actually like for us and all metal side, it's actually job security because it's a very cyclical business and you can easily ramp up and ramp down without having to hire and lay off people. And so it all starts with like putting people first, caring for your people and building that trust with them. And really like on the manufacturing side, it's getting buy-in from the people. And so, for example, like, I mean, we're talking $1 million machines. And anytime we buy a new machine, I take the department lead of that department that we're going to add the equipment. And then, the machine tool providers will fly us all out over the country, which is a cool experience for them, the department lead, to get to partake in. And I'm like, hey, pick out whichever one you want, whichever one you think is going to be best. You pick it out. And if it goes well, awesome. If it doesn't go well, I'm your fall guy. It's all my fault. So you're picking it out. So what I'm doing there is I'm getting buy-in, right? So you can't force innovation and automation onto people without their buy-in, especially in manufacturing, because they're going to be the ones running it. And so, that is key to get that buy-in. And so that's my process. One, making sure they know you care for them, and then just getting their buy-in is really part of it. So and as it translates over to printed, how we're building our team, it's also finding the right personality types, right? So like I'm a big personality profile guy. And in manufacturing, to your point earlier, like a lot of people aren't like if you're going to sit there and run a machine all day, every day, like chances are you're not a very autonomous person, which is also associated with the risk, which is also associated with innovation. So like typically those people that like processes and that are highly detailed, like process and highly detailed, which means they're not
Yeah.
going to like change, right? So that
Right.
goes back to that buy-in. But as it relates to, our building out our team on printed, it's identifying people that are autonomous, that do have that high I trait, ingenuity, ideas. And so we do personality assessments on everybody we hire, both for all metals and printed. And really everybody that's been hired at printed is all entrepreneurs. And so we're building an entrepreneurial organization. And eventually we'll need more administrative type people, but early on, it's like everybody's wearing, 10 different hats. So you got to have people that are really autonomous. Otherwise, you're going to be, answering yes or no and telling me exactly what to do. Like we don't have time to handhold. Like, hey, go take this and run with it. And so that's the other part of it. It's like you want to, as you're hiring your team and building out your team, you want to get people that are autonomous, that like new challenges, like to solve problems, and that have, either the high I trait, or high autonomy. One of the two is critical in that. And when you can get both, it's really dangerous.
Cool. That's awesome.
And if you
What?
can get a high detail on top of it, then you found a freaking all-star.
Yeah, the
Instead of a
unicorn.
bunch of
Yeah,
people like me.
that's awesome.
Ideas.
Well, what advice would you give to somebody who's starting their career journey or starting entrepreneurship? Like, yeah, what do you say to the young bloods?
Man, I feel like I'm getting back in. Like it's just like I've been feeling the angst of like the entrepreneurial journey and stepping. I've never done fundraising before, so like I'm about to do this. I've always been on the other side of the table, and so like one, I just can relate. Like it's forcing me to exercise my faith, which is a great thing, right? Stepping. I say life happens outside your comfort zone. I say that all the time to my wife and kids, and so. Anything great is gonna be hard. I mean, we talk about this, Ben, with Rise Up Kings. It's like pain is the path to all things that are worth it. Pain is the path, right? And so, I mean, you look at it like, what are the most rewarding things in life? Like raising kids. Well, dadgummit, it is freaking hard. I'll tell you
Right.
right now, I got a newborn, a 2-year-old, and a 6-year-old, and we're in the thick of it. It is hard, but there's
Yeah.
also nothing more rewarding. Same with your marriage. Like you have to be constantly investing in your marriage for it to be good and working at it. And so what I would say to anybody is you're gonna have to work your tail off, and but it'll be worth it. And even if the business is not successful, it's still worth it because you learned something, you tried something new, you stepped out in faith, out of your comfort zone, and that's where life happens. Failure is just an opportunity to learn. And so I don't even believe in that word. It's really just the process. When we talk about it too, Brock, the journey is the outcome is or the destination or outcome is not like what it is all about. It's about the journey. Like it's,
Yeah.
anytime you set a big ambitious goal for your business and you get there, it's like, okay, well now what? But it's like,
Yep.
no, the journey. And so I know I'm rambling a little bit, but it's bottom line is like step out in faith. At worst, you'll fail, and that's still a great thing. It's a learning opportunity, and you grew in that process, which is not a failure whatsoever.
Yeah, it's just this general attitude of I get to, like, I get to
Yeah, oh
do
yeah,
this,
let's
right? I get
go.
to clean up this kid's vomit. I get to, like, these, like, even these painful things are really like we get to do them.
Exactly.
And I think being a business leader, we get to help people. It's like, oh, my employees can never get it right. No, I get to lead my employees. I get to mentor people. I get to have a life of meaning because of those harder things that I'm doing. What was your first job? Like, how'd you make your first buck as a human being?
I think my first job was actually working here at the shop, my family's fabricating business. I'm the third generation owner. I didn't state that, which I should have. Also, early on, I sold gym memberships
Uh-huh.
and worked as at a restaurant, a breakfast diner, and which I think everybody in their life needs to serve food at some point. It's just
Yeah.
like puts you in a place of humility and teach you how to serve others, which is huge.
Hmm.
Because no matter what you do, like being a leader just means being a servant. And
Yeah.
so, and then, yeah, when I was 18, I started a party planning business. And so I had a party planning business when I was 18, and wound that down as I transitioned to all metals in my kind of early to mid 20s. And so, entrepreneur from the start.
Yeah. Really cool. Yeah. I had a paper route, definitely did some food service. Yeah, it's great. It just, it's cool to see where people come from. What toy or hobby did you have as a child that inspired what you do career wise today?
That's a great question. I played a lot of sports. Soccer was my primary sport, but growing up, I played all of them, and then I decided to pursue soccer seriously in kind of middle school, or high school. And how does that overlap to? I'd say leading. From the I was a leader on all the teams I was on. I was captain of my select soccer team in high school, which was one of the top five in the country. And so just leading people, motivating people, serving people is that's what how I don't it doesn't matter what industry I'm in. I came to my business, my family's business, because my dad and my grandfather are two of the biggest servant-hearted people I've ever met and selfless. And so I always wanted to come help them, help my dad, because my grandfather had retired when I came on board. But serving people, man, that's what it's all about. And so whether that's in metal fab or construction or my family, any arena that I'm in, I want to
Yeah.
lead people by serving them and pointing them to Jesus.
Yeah, it's awesome. Um, and like soccer is such a good metaphor for all of that, like positional play, like, hey, this is your position to play so that we can score the goals, so we can win the result. But it takes such a
Mhm.
collaborative energy. And then you're like, hey, I'm going to serve you from my position, but I'm also serving you by letting you know what I expect of you and how you could best help get to the result. So love that.
Yeah,
Um,
team sports are so great for business.
yeah, for
A
sure.
lot translates there.
Absolutely. Well, what was your favorite and least favorite course in school?
Favorite was always math stuff. I enjoyed math and was good at it. Just can't, maybe it was my favorite because it was easy. Um, Least favorite was probably English or history. Um, in high school, I went to private school with a really hard English curriculum. So, like, people think I'm a really good writer now, but I was an average student there, so it was very challenging. That'd probably be my least
Yeah,
favorite
I'm still
English.
highly dependent on modern technology for correct writing. So I'm right there
Yeah,
with
oh,
you
we all are. Once you have it, it's like you become dependent on it. Like I don't know how to spell anymore.
for sure. Well, what quote from a famous person lives in your mind rent free? That shouldn't be a hard one for you because I know you and I are in a similar faith-based mastermind group with Rise Up Kings, and so we definitely collect the quotes. But what's your favorite?
This is a good one right here on my desk. There's a couple good ones, but it's from the well, one is be a buffalo. The other side, so buffaloes run towards the storm. So when a storm comes, all the animals run away from it. I've been holding behind enough. And buffaloes run towards it, and by doing that, they're through the storm quicker. And then the other side is just the man in the arena, the Thomas Roosevelt. It's kind of blurry there.
Mm,
Apologies, but and there's a long quote here, but it's just about it's the man in the arena. It's just doing your best, striving valiantly with everything you have. And then of course scripture, Colossians 3:23 is my life verse. Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as if working for the Lord, not for human masters. And it goes on to say that in 24 that essentially you'll get an eternal treasure as a reward. And so whatever you're doing, whether it's sweeping the floor, serving your family, journal entries and accounting, whatever it is, do it for the Lord, and you will receive an eternal treasure. Because we know that money doesn't satisfy, and doing a good job can satisfy you in some ways, but how much more? And that verse was really the turning point for me in my career as I went from party planning to actually doing journal entries. I have a CPA license, so I came into the business from the finance side. And I was like, what am I doing? And God was changing my heart at that time. And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm taking a pay cut from throwing parties to like come do, time entries and journal entries. And it was just like felt odd. And that verse I read in a devotional from Rick Warren, and it gave my work a new purpose that was an eternal purpose. And so I went from like being a punch the clock guy to like the first one here, last one to leave, because I had an eternal perspective and eternal motivation. So that's
Yeah,
really my life verse and my favorite quote.
I love that. What we talk about in STEM is, if you look at Genesis and how God's creating all these complex systems, and then when we're in software development, we get to organize the details of a business. Just like we're kind of imitating God in the sense that we're creating complex systems, we're organizing
Yeah.
details, we're having dominion over the earth by naming things properly. That's what software development is all about. And I think there's something very glorifying in doing that to the fullest extent, to the best of your ability, where you're really, God could just do it by speaking. We have to do a little more toil, but we get this ability to imitate him by creating software and organizing details and creating something from nothing, which I think is really should be considered purposeful and a lot of
Absolutely. I mean, we were created to create. We were created. I mean, the first commandment was to cultivate, which isn't exactly creating, but an aspect of it is. And so I totally, that's a great analogy. And that's why there's fulfillment in that way, because God created it that way.
if people like what you've had to share today, how would you like them to connect with you?
Yeah, they can reach out to me at Lance at print3dtechnologies.com. That's Lance at print3dtechnologies.com.
Cool. We'll get that on the show notes and your
And you can
LinkedIn
also check out our
profile.
website. Sorry, yeah, print3dtechnologies.com is our website. Feel free to check us out there. And Instagram, YouTube, all the social media, LinkedIn, you name it, we're on all of it. So,
Okay, cool. We'll get all that on the show notes. And then you are actively looking for investors. So as we air
yes,
this,
sir.
you guys are looking to talk to capitalists that want to be part of the 3D printed home, affordable home movement that you are creating. So we'll
And
make sure to.
developers, builders too. So, we're looking for strategic partners. I mean, you think about if you're a developer, you can invest in the company. Also, set up, give us a rep at a development deal that you have for a rental community or houses you're selling. Now you're investing it. You have this deal that's secured typically in that type of investment, and then you're funding your business that you've also invested in and ramping it up. So strategic guys like that in the development side, and then finding early adopters on the builder side is really strategic for us. It's something we're looking for.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks for being with me today.
Thank you, Ben. Appreciate it so much.